Well, the time is just gone 8:27 a.m. as we continue with the broadcast this morning and taking a look at KwaZulu Natal. Now, we are talking about an energy transformation summit to unveil infrastructure projects. And the question is, how ambitious are these projects? Because this plan is to be energy independent by the year 2035. And we're going across now to be joined by energy expert Chris Yelland. Chris, good morning to you, sir. And as always, welcome to the show.
Morning to you and to your listeners.
Yes, clearly we're going to see a lot of these plans come to the fore, and we're looking at KwaZulu Natal in terms of looking at being energy independent by 2035. And just to unpack the thinking behind this ambitious plan, just your thoughts first, Chris, is, all provinces obviously taking a look at their own energy requirements, their own energy needs. The ideal would be energy independent. Just your initial thoughts on provinces hosting or holding these type of summits.
Yeah, you're quite right. Municipalities are looking around. They are wanting to not necessarily become completely independent of Eskom, but to reduce their current overdependence on Eskom. So it's not like a case of going off the grid, you might say, or disconnecting from Eskom, but it's a case of looking to procure energy at the best source, looking to reduce carbon emissions, looking to improve energy and security, and also looking to get a handle on the price of electricity going forward by doing a certain amount of what you might call self-generation or own generation within the province or within a city. So we see city of Cape Town doing looking at renewable energy from independent power producers. And recently we saw Durban doing having a little summit looking at their energy future. And I must say I am rather surprised and at their thoughts of new coal and nuclear power for the city of Durban, a city that cannot even run a sewage works. The thought of them trying to outsource or run a nuclear power station is quite frankly scary.
Well, it certainly is because what the city is saying that they at least they're looking at a percentage of around 20% in terms of generating their own electricity, looking at independent power producers, and IPPs have become somewhat of a swear word for want of a better term in this country because there's just so much that people are talking about IPPs and looking at the city of Durban, considering that route now, there are certainly huge question marks with IPPs, but also at the same time major concerns, Chris.
Yeah, look, I think the role of IPPs is very important and growing in South Africa. The biggest swear word, is not IPPs, it's Eskom. Eskom, we are experiencing, load shedding for up to 8 hours a day sometimes. And the sentiment towards Eskom is really deteriorating. And IPPs are seen and are indeed a very important part of our future electricity because they will help reduce our current overdependence on Eskom as a monopoly generator that is failing us. And the way to manage risk is to diversify, not only diversify, away from our overdependence on Eskom, but to diversify away from South Africa's heavy overdependence on coal. Coal accounts for some 80% of the electricity generated in South Africa, and the coal-fired fleet is seriously underperforming. At times, it has been, in fact, the coal fleet. If you look at the availability of the coal fleet, it has been significantly lower than 50%. That means half of the coal fleet is not available for service at times, and certainly at this time. So I think we should not look, to IPPs as the problem. We should look to them as part of the solution, not the only solution, but certainly part of the solution.
Yes. Now, just your thought on this whole ambitious plan on a nuclear power station. Now, what we are looking at, the capacity that they're talking about, which is roughly half the size of the
The
Kuberg
size of
nuclear plant. Now, to set up a plant of this nature would require it would require massive investments, but also at the same time, looking at the expertise that is required to set up, considering that Kuberg was set up well over what, close to 40 years ago, Chris?
Yeah, that's right. I honestly believe that the people at the city of Durban hunting these ideas are politically motivated and are living in a cloud cuckoo land. As I mentioned earlier, the city of Durban cannot even outsource the supply, the provision of sanitation services for their sewage works. And they certainly are not in a financial position or a technical position or in an organizational position to manage the outsourcing, of a nuclear power station, let alone doing it themselves. So I think these ideas are completely misguided. There is no substance really behind them. There is no business case that is being presented. They just kind of random ideas that get thrown around and are not the subject of intense studies based on science, based on finance and business, and looking carefully at the business case. They talk about small modular nuclear reactors as though they are a reality. There is work being done on small modular reactors, but they have not reached the commercialization stage. They've not been licensed for operation. There is a pilot plant being undertaken in China, but it's probably a decade or 2 decades away from being a commercially available option for South Africa. We have absolutely no idea what the price is. So, this kind of talk is, from my opinion, is just misguided.
Yes, and also, I think too many, we're not installing inverters, to take care of our power needs. I mean, this is a massive project that we're talking about, and as you mentioned, it takes a lot to set up a nuclear power station, and I think this is where the problem is. But also at the same time, looking at all these ambitious plans that these cities are talking about, without any substance, without any backing, what level of support, I mean, are they actually getting from government at a national level? I mean, we've got a minister of in the form of Gwede Mantashe. We're going to be having a minister of electricity, and clearly all these cities or all these provinces that have got these ambitious plans, at some point in time they need some direction, they need some guidance from experts, but also guidance from at a national level from the government itself, Chris.
Yes, you're right. I think we are lacking in a clear policy framework. The regulatory framework is also outdated, needs major reform. The whole electricity supply industry, it needs a major rethink because it is not really fit for purpose, both at the generation level, transmission level, and at the distribution level. So if you look, let's first of all start off with generation. We know that Eskom generation is financially unsustainable, operationally, financially, as well as environmentally. At the transmission level, transmission is not a bad business. And Eskom transmission is performing pretty well. It's underinvested. It needs major investment because it's been neglected for a decade. But nevertheless, is performing pretty well, although it needs further investment to open up access to other generators. The generation sector, of course, being poorly performing, represents a very high risk for South Africa because about 92% of electricity comes from Eskom generation, and it's performing very poorly. So we need to diversify and bring in new generators. At the distribution of electricity, which is fundamentally the area where the municipalities act as electricity distributors for most of the country, This is also a very toxic business. Many of these municipal distributors are financially unsound, unstable, don't have the necessary management, financial resources, skills, old plant needing refurbishment, they don't have the money, and they can't even pay for the electricity they procure from Eskom. So really there is a need for a fundamental reform, looking at various market mechanisms for both generation as well as distribution, and also the transmission grid company needs to be taken out of Eskom to facilitate non-discriminatory access to other generators. At the moment, there's a big conflict of interest because Eskom is both the generator and the transmitter of electricity, so it gives preference to its own generation, and it inhibits the access to the grid by independent generators. That's been going on for years. So there's a lot that needs to be done, and unfortunately, we have a lot of policy uncertainty. Different ministries, whether it is DPE, whether it's DMRE, whether it's COGTA, whether it's Treasury, NERSA, Eskom, all pulling in different directions without somebody to really coordinate and steer the ship in a rational, coordinated way.
Well, Chris, thank you very much for that. And obviously, we will be watching the space. And from time to time, I know we catch up with you when these type of developments. Okay, but for now, we thank you and we wish you well.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Chris Yelland with us this morning, and with that, we're going to go for another break. We come back. We will be focusing on the fire that had taken place at the refugee camp in Bangladesh, impacting on the Rohingya